Well, we are at 7, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the final Coaches Corner of the Masterpiece season. Yay! It's been a long but hopefully a fun season to get here. We're really excited here to see everyone after the qualifiers have been wrapped up, and we've had a little break over the holidays, and now we're going to get back into it for the championship event. We're really excited to see everyone. Again, if we haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Louis Rubo. I'm a team development education specialist with First Nevada. I'm here to help out along with many others who I see are in the chat as well. Caroline, Scott, Angelo, if you wouldn't mind helping with the chat as the night progresses, I'd be grateful. And also, Caroline, Scott, jump in if I say anything incorrect about the Northern Tournament. Especially with the fun adventures that we've already in planning for that tournament. So do correct anything I say. As a reminder, and it's been this way all season, I uploaded today's presentation to our public resource folder. That folder not only holds all of our coaches' corners from the season, but all of our workshop documents, as well as supplementary documents that we think might be helpful. So do make sure you're referring to that. When you come back next season, which everyone will be, we will continue to use the exact same folder. We have made this an evergreen folder. We'll just archive the Masterpiece season and then start up with whatever next season is all about. And so you might want to bookmark this location. But that also means for tonight, as we talk through some of the details, if you missed something, you can go back and look at the actual presentation slides as well. We are recording this, so you can go onto our YouTube channel and view the Coaches Corner as well. Okay, so here's the plan for our last Coaches Corner. And it's a little bit slightly different than what I published, but still all the content is more or less there. I do want to start off by talking about the championship events themselves and what you should be expecting from them. As we get moving towards the championship events, I want to kind of look over our shoulder back at the qualifiers and think about the lessons learned from that and things that we hopefully can maybe correct and improve on going into that championship event. And the last thing I want to cover is for a handful of teams, there is yet one more event to go. So I do want to discuss what those events are and who will earn those bids to those other events. So let's get started by talking about the championship events. We've been at this now. Boy, the Masterpiece season got released at the beginning of August. So we've been at this for almost coming up on a half year. Crazy thing. August, September, October, November, December, January. Wow, 6 months almost we have been doing this. So it all comes down to our last two events. We do have an event in the north and we have an event in the south that will happen simultaneously. So some of the logistics and specifics related to those events, they will be, this Saturday, the 27th. So just a few days away. I'm sure all of our coaches are off working hard on getting your team ready for it. Do note, this is a little bit unusual. Although the two events will happen simultaneously on the calendar this Saturday, the northern event is going to have, we might say, a delayed start. We will be starting that event at 10 a.m., and it will run slightly longer than usual, go to 6. This is a constraint. We're gonna start using. We're trying to use the University of Nevada Reno campus for our Northern Championship event. And due to limitations and constraints from the venue, we kind of had to shift our normal schedule. So do note, if you are competing in the North, you will have a later start than what we've been used to with the qualifiers. In the South, it will be the same schedule. We will actually return to SECTA, Southeast Career Techno Academy, which was host of one of our qualifying events already. So we will return there for our championship in the South with our normal 7:30 start time for team check-in. Team counts are in the North, we'll have 24 teams competing, while in the South, we will have 42 teams. So very similar to the qualifier sizes. Now, as I was kind of alluding to, in the South, we will be basically repeating our exact schedule that we used at the qualifying events, where we'll have a team check-in at 7:30 in the morning, followed by a coaches meeting right at 8 a.m. So we do need to make sure at least one coach is attending that meeting with the other coach working with the team in the pits. Following the coaches meeting, we will jump right into our practice matches and judging sessions. I saw the email went out, I think it was over the weekend by Jenny. She sent it out to all the coaches with their schedule for the South. As we did with the qualifiers, we'll break the morning up and have an opening ceremony at 10, which will be followed by the official matches and more judging. We will have an event-wide lunch break, and then we'll finish up in the afternoon with more official matches, rounds 2 and 3, along with a little bit more judging. We will then finish up with our closing ceremonies. In the north, though, things are going to be slightly different because we have a little bit more of a condensed schedule where we have to be in and out by certain times. So what we are doing in the north, again, team check-in will start at 10 a.m. And Caroline has also emailed all of our northern teams this information. After the check-in, there will be a coaches meeting. Off the top of my head, I believe it was 10:20-ish, give or take. 10:20 a.m. And that will be followed by the opening ceremony. So this will be a little bit different than what we've done the qualifiers, where the opening ceremonies kind of broke up the morning event. Now we'll do is do the opening ceremonies right away. We will go into our practice matches just as usual, with judging starting at the same time. But instead of breaking apart the practice and official matches, once the practice matches are done, we'll roll right into the official matches. We will have a campus-wide lunch break. Do note the lunch break is going to be slightly later. I believe it's 1:30. Caroline, do correct me if I'm wrong here. I know we're working with a lot of young kids and adults for that matter. 1:30 might be a little bit of a late time be eating lunch, so kind of plan accordingly so that everyone's got a little food in their belly, make it through that later morning into that lunch break. That does happen a little bit later. After lunch, we'll come back and finish up with the official matches and some more judging, very similar to before. We're just kind of shifting everything backwards a few hours, and then we'll have our closing ceremonies later in the day. So it will be a delayed start and a little bit longer into the afternoon for that northern event, but more or less, minus where the opening ceremonies are, do expect it to be roughly the same as before. One other thing I want to add, I don't really have a slide for it. I forgot to put one in here. This is the first Lego League Challenge Championship events, which what we have here are teams that moved on from their qualifiers. At both the North and the South, we are also going to be running a First Lego League Explore Festival, and we really encourage you to come check it out. These are the little kids, the little munchkins are going to be running around showing off their projects as well. In both cases, that will be later in the day. So in the second half of the day in the afternoon, I would definitely encourage you to stop by and support our younger program, First Lego League Explorer, and see that program. And if you are an elementary school team, you may consider starting up an Explorer program at your school because it becomes a great feeder program to your challenge team later on. So I would definitely encourage you to stop by and check out those Explorers and support those kids in their long work to get here as well. Important reminder here is that although we've already competed at a qualifying event and you've turned in a team roster for that qualifying event, we do need you to turn in a fresh roster for the championship events. So you do need to go back into your first dashboard, go under your team contacts and print out a new roster for us. If all of your team members are not listed on that roster, you do need to fill out the paper version for those last few students who may need to be added on. We don't automatically move forward the roster from the qualifiers. We understand team members come and go, and this has been well over a month, and we've got into a new semester. So your roster might have been adjusted slightly. So we do need you to print out a new roster and bring it with you and turn it in at check-in. We do not have printers on site to have you printed out there. We do need you to bring in a hard copy with you and have that turned in first thing in the morning, right when you arrive at the event, both north and south. Good question we get every year, and I just want to make sure I scream this loud and clear. This is just a continuation of the Masterpiece season. So at the championship event, we're not changing anything about the rules. So you are still doing the same Masterpiece missions, and you are still doing the same innovation project. So that means you can do everything you did at the qualifier with additional improvements if your team did it since the qualifier. So we're not going to pull out new mission models you've never seen before. We're not going to make a modification to the innovation project. Your team is encouraged, in fact, to continue building on what happened at the qualifiers. Keep tweaking your robot, keep tweaking your innovation project, and improving it so that this next round you will be doing even better than you did at the qualifiers. An important part of that is that no information about how you performed or what you shared at the qualifiers is moved forward to the championship event. You are starting fresh. So if you won the robot game on a qualifier, congratulations, but that has no bearing on your ranking or scoring at the championship event. We all start with a clean slate. Same with all the judging. If you won an award before, we don't move that forward and we don't share that with the judges. You are coming in presenting from scratch to our judges. And in fact, some of our judges may not have even been involved with the qualifiers. So you really do think you're coming in from a fresh perspective in terms of your presentation. But that doesn't mean you have to come up with a new innovation project. You just can iterate and improve on what you already have. Just share it in a new and improved way from what you did at the qualifying events. This does mean, as we did with the qualifiers, with the robot game, every team will be given the opportunity for one practice match, first thing in the day, followed by 3 regular matches, official matches. And just like with the qualifier, only your top score from the official matches will rank your team. The practice matches are just that. They're purely practice. They don't do anything in terms of influencing your ranking or your team score or your judging, other than a core values violation, or if you show some really strong core values during practice matches, that'll be noted. But really, it comes down to, in terms of the robot performance scores, those 3 official matches, just like the qualifier, only your top performing score is used to rank your team. The second and third scores are only used in the rare cases of a tiebreaker, but that's pretty rare and exceptional. It's just your top score overall. No averages, no consistency measurement. You can score amazing one run and not so good in the other 2 runs and still do very well in the robot performance. So just like the qualifiers, we're moving forward with the exact same ideas that we had before. Same thing for judging. Your judging session will be identical as before. So your team will be invited in at a scheduled time into the judging room. You will go through that half an hour presentation sequence that you did during the qualifying. Again, nothing has been moved forward, so your judges are going to be learning about your team from scratch. So don't assume that they have any prior knowledge about your team or what they did or performed earlier. You're coming in with a clean slate to them. Just like we did with the qualifying judging, your team will come in, they will introduce themselves, the judges will introduce themselves for a few minutes, and then you will be given your 5 minutes to present your innovation project. That's 5 minutes dedicated just to your team. After that 5 minutes is up, you will move into the Q&A portion of the innovation project, where the judges will have a dialogue with your team, ask them some questions, so that the judges are able to fill out their rubric appropriately. That is then followed by a robot design presentation by your team for 5 minutes. Again, then that's followed up with 5 minutes of Q&A between the judges and your team. And then there'll be 3 minutes where they'll discuss your team's core values and their applications of it throughout the season. And then the last bit of your judging session will be some feedback from the judges. So again, I want to emphasize that although we're continuing with the Masterpiece season and everything you've been working on is accumulating up to this point, don't assume anything about the judges in terms of what they have knowledge for your team. You really are going to be starting all over. I also want to emphasize you do not have to come up with a brand new innovation project presentation or robot design presentation. You could use literally the exact same presentation from before, or you can make some improvements or modifications to it as necessary. So you are invited to do whatever is best for your team to communicate both its innovation project and its robot design, and also demonstrate its core values along the way. As a reminder, and we're going to move into this in a moment, your team is being measured on 4 different things. All 4 items are equally weighted. So we don't take the innovation project and overweight it, or the robot design or whatnot. All 4 areas are equally considered when we're thinking about the overall champion and how we're going to find that champion for the event. The first quarter of how your team is measured is in the robot game itself. The robot game is, of course, what your team has been working on with the mission models, where you've got your mat, you've got all the masterpiece missions, and you've been trying to build and program a robot that can solve as many of those missions as possible. And just like with everything else, you do not have to do the same missions from before. You can do completely new missions. You can do exactly the same missions. It's really your team's choice and how you want to approach the robot game. But in the big picture of how your team is being scored, 1/4 or 25% of your overall score is going to come out of the robot game. Another 25% is going to be on how your team presents the robot design to judges. And this is the part that talks about why did your team design your robot in a particular way? What is the programming behind your robot? How did your team come up with the ideas for programming? And you're going to share that in your 5-minute robot design presentation with that Q&A following up. So your robot design is very complementary to the robot game. They do go hand in hand, of course, because you're designing a robot to solve the robot game. But they do each cover 1/4 of your overall champion score. Of course, then another part is the innovation project. Some of our teams, in fact, a lot of our teams completely separate out the innovation project from the robot game. That is fine and kind of expected at some level. The innovation project, of course, is a continuation of what you were doing last fall, where you're addressing the masterpiece prompt for this season. Again, you don't have to start over going into the championship event. It's just a continuation from before. But in the big picture of your champion score, do recognize it is 25% of your overall score. And of course, the last bit is core values. There are 6 core values that we build on in FIRST. In any of our FIRST programs, we consider things like discovery, impact, teamwork, innovation, inclusion, and fun as the main ethos, the main driving force or philosophy behind why we're doing all of this. And so your team is going to be evaluated on their core values, which is going to represent, again, another 25% of the overall ranking. So as we're looking for our overall state champions this year, as with any other year, we take these 4 areas, we equally weight them, and consider them all when we identify our overall champion. A team that performs very well in the robot game may not even be considered for the championship award because they did poorly in the judging area, or there was a core values incident that we had to address. What we're looking for in our champion is someone who is balanced in all 4 areas and has done well in all 4 areas. They aren't necessarily at the top in all 4 or any of them, but they are well balanced and are consistently good across all 4 areas. And again, this is the same process and procedure we used during the qualifiers. I just want to reiterate it as we're going into the championship. So I'm going to pause for a moment, open up the floor. Are there any questions just about kind of the big picture logistics related to the championship events? I see a lot in the chat, but it looks like everyone's kind of getting that answered. Go ahead.
Hello, Luis.
How you doing?
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question about, is that true that only 3 teams move up from north and south?
I am going to address that in a moment. The short answer is yes. For the Southern Championship, only 3 teams will move on from this tournament, as opposed to our qualifier, where about 30% of our teams move forward.
And north too, right? Both of them.
North will only have 2 teams moving forward, and that's just because of the difference in the number of teams competing at the 2 events. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Joseph. I can't do what we did. Oh, is Jenny on here? I was looking to see. I know her FRC team is hosting this event, and then she announced a canned food drive. I'm not sure exactly how they are going to collect that. I would say bring it to check-in, and we will make sure Jenny's got a way to accept that. Yep. Good. Well, if any questions do come up, do throw them in the chat. Yes. Second coach wanted to know if she could bring a camera in to record the judging session. Yeah. So just as the same policy we had for judging at the qualifiers, you are allowed as a coach to go in and record silently the judging session with the intention of using that information after the event. And working with your team post-event to kind of analyze the things. Any recordings, photos, whatever, both in judging and robot game cannot be used on site to request a change in score. But yeah, for the purpose of archiving it and to kind of do a post-analysis, yeah, your coaches are welcome to record the judging as long as done in silence without any prompting of the students in their presentation. Because we really do need the students to be the focus through this weekend. Which coincidentally is going to bring me to my very first topic in the next session. So what I'm going to do is move forward. Now that we've all competed at an event, what I want to do is talk about some of the lessons learned, both from a volunteering perspective, but also as a reminder to our teams moving forward so that we have the best event this weekend at our championships. And the first item I do want to just remind you is coming straight out of the participation rules for First Leg League Challenge is all of the work presented at an event is the work of the children themselves. And so, because what we're trying to do here is one of the main driving forces behind FIRST as an overall program is we are trying to stimulate the involvement of STEM in the next generation of STEM professionals, ideally. And we really want the work to be done by the students to the point where it literally is a rule in the participation rules that these kids need to do the work. And that goes not only all season, ideally through practice, here we are at the end of the season, but also at the event itself. And so when we just remind our coaches very gently that they should not be building or programming the robot at the event, it really, if modifications need to be done, the students themselves need to be doing it. And so just keep that in mind this Saturday, that everything that the kids present, both innovation project, robot design, robot game itself, all needs to be the work of the children themselves, not of the adult mentors. Our roles as mentors is to guide them and to facilitate them through the season and try to remove as many obstacles that they might encounter along the way. All right, so we're there to give them the best experience they have so they can reach their full potential through the season. So again, just keep that in mind as you're presenting this weekend, as the students are presenting, I should say, not you, presenting this weekend. It really does need to be the work of the children. And that comes back to the question about recording in the judging room. We want the kids to be the focus there. At the robot game table, the students should be making all the choices. They should be the ones deciding when to grab the robot. They should be the ones deciding which mission to run. We're there this weekend really just to make sure they get to the judging room, they get to the robot game matches, and that we are their loudest supporters and cheerers in the crowd. Another gentle reminder is please do not bring your team's challenge set to the facility. Even though we do have some larger areas, they still become a safety hazard when teams have these on the floor. They also is a potential of the mission models getting mixed up with what we provide. So again, please just leave those back at home. Do not bring in your mats or your mission models. We will provide the practice tables, and of course, we have all of the official game sets there. So just leave them in your car, or even better yet, just leave them back at the school or your homes. Seriously, it's a safety issue. We have too many people tripping over them. They do take up excessive amount of space. And so we do the best we can to make sure to provide the practice tables for your teams. So do leave them at home. If we see you coming in, we will just politely remind you, could you just take that back to your car? so that it doesn't get confused or become an issue. Along those lines, I just want to remind a few rules related to the practice tables themselves. The purpose of our practice tables is for your teams to be refining and fine-tuning and calibrating the robots. The practice tables are not meant to be a practice session for your team to be developing new missions. Ideally, you're coming in with all of your missions polished and perfect. We know that's not necessarily going to happen. There's going to be fine-tunes on this turn or that turn or how far you need to travel. We understand that fine-tune is going to happen, but be mindful that you have 41 other teams in the South and 23 other teams in the North that are also participating in the same event. They too want to do some fine-tuning with their robots. And so we have to be mindful of that sharing, that gracious professionalism, and providing everybody equitable access to those practice tables. So you will have your allotted time. We do understand you do need to use those practice tables, but just be very mindful that other teams also need to use those tables, and that you really should be focusing on just quickly fine-tuning some things, not being at the tables, actually developing a whole nother mission or making drastic changes to your missions. That should be finalized before you come to the event on Saturday. Also, as a gentle reminder, these mission practice tables are owned by First Nevada. So what we try to do here is we have a limited number of parts. And so if your team is working with a particular mission, do make sure before you leave the practice table that you leave all of our equipment behind so that the next team will have full usage of the field as well. Occasionally parts do tend to walk away, especially this year because those cute little orange audience members everyone wants to keep, and other things. And it's very easy just to mindlessly grab them and pull everything away and walk away. We all do it. So coaches, just help us, double check your team to make sure all the mission models and all the accessories are left behind that is appropriate. On the same hand, make sure your team grabs all the things that is appropriate for your team. We're making quite a collection of miscellaneous lost and found parts, including a lot of Lego attachments and jigs and whatnot. So also make sure your team is taking those away. I will say in the South, when we tend to have leftover parts, they're finding their way to the main robot game scoring table, as well as lost and found. So if anything comes up, just head to the main area, and we'll make an announcement, or we'll see if we've already have collected those items themselves. I've been preaching this all year, and I just want to, it's my last time to do it, so I'm going to do it one more time. Make sure you read the robot game rulebook. And we still have teams coming up to the robot game table, violating some very straightforward rules that are stated in the rulebook. And so do make sure your team has gone through it. And if your team has read through the robot game rulebook, one more pass wouldn't hurt. It definitely wouldn't hurt to have a digital version or a hard copy on site with you during this weekend's events as well. But do make sure everyone has gone through this. Even though we've gone through a full qualifier already, we still have teams violating some of these rules. Some of them are tricky, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But there's still some easy things that we're like, well, that's right there on the beginning of the rule book. So do make sure you've gone through it. With that said, I'm going to have some bonus time tonight. That if you have extra time, we're going to go through a couple of common things related to Masterpiece later afterwards, kind of the an appendix, if you will, to today's Coaches Corner. And we'll talk about that later at the end. You're invited to stick around, but you're not required to. We're going to go through some of the specific robot game rulebooks rules that we've seen teams ask us about, and they are in a gray area, so we just want to make sure they get clarified. Don't forget as well that there are challenge updates. When First is developing these games, it's a multi-year process. It takes over 2 years to develop these games. And they can't think of all the creative ways our teams find loopholes, or they just overlook something very obvious. And so the challenge updates are first way of going back and say, oops, our bad. But they are official rules. So do make sure your team is gone through them. Thankfully, this year it's been straightforward. There's only 3 pages worth of it, and most of it's pictures. So, but you are still responsible for knowing these rules. Because they are considered official rules. And in fact, I do want to emphasize the only official rules are the robot game rulebook and these challenge updates. Anything you've seen on YouTube or Reddit or read somewhere online, unless it's covered explicitly in these two documents, then it's not official. These are the definitive rules for all of First Lego League. And so, just check if you see something creative online, it's your team's responsibility to make sure if it's legal or not. And it always comes back to that robot game rulebook and these challenge updates. I've already referenced this, but just as a reminder, what we're doing here is we're really trying to promote the future of STEM engagement and promoting that engagement with our youth team members. And as part of that driving force behind it is we have 6 core values that we're trying to promote all the time. And of course, that's discovery, innovation, impact, teamwork, inclusion, and fun. And this is what all of our teams should be thinking about, not only at the event itself, but also during practice. And in an ideal world, you're also applying it to the real world outside of FIRST. I bring this up as I just want to remind everyone that these core values, these 6 core values, are going to be explicitly measured in your judging session, as well as at the robot game. So in your judging session, the judges will fill out a core values rubric that will go as 25% of your overall champion score. But also, as part of this, there is a gracious professionalism score that the referees will score your team at the table itself. The default is all of our teams get 3 points. If they see something that is not very polite or good, they will mark them below 3 points. And if they see some excessive positive demonstration of core values, they will go up to the exceeds level in 4 points. I do want to point out that this is where we explicitly measure the core values in First Lego League, but we implicitly are always keeping an eye out for core values. So that includes things that happen in the pits, in the hallways, over lunch. This also includes coaches and parents. So anybody representing the team in any way, fashion, or form, they are responsible for demonstrating positive core values at the event and all throughout the season. So if there is an issue, and they do arise all the time, just politely come up and find Jenny in the South or Caroline in the North and have a nice polite discussion with them off the side. And, it might be something that we overlooked or did incorrectly, and that we can have a good conversation about it. But we want to just always be polite and gracious about our conversations. And we also always want to put the kids first. And so we're always going to do that, whatever it is, to help support their experience there at the event. But I do want to emphasize that the core values are not only measured in that judging room and at the robot game table, they're measured throughout the entire tournament, and they are applied to everybody. It's not just the kids, it's also the coaches, and it's the parents. If we have issues with parents in the stands, it's happened, it can reflect negatively on your team. And so if something were to come up, we do just try to have a quiet conversation to the side, away from the kids, just to kind of keep it figured out and figure out what the best solution is. And it doesn't always mean that First Nevada is right. Sometimes we do make minor mistakes ourselves. So just politely bring it to our attention if something was overlooked. But again, I just want to say core values is for everybody at the event in there. One thing I do want to remind everyone, since we have competed already, you do have access to your old judging rubrics from the qualifiers. So before the qualifying event, you should have received an email asking you to join the Event Hub. Through the Event Hub, you should have been able to access your judging rubrics. So if you haven't, do email us to let us know. I would strongly suggest you look through those rubric comments and take note of them. But also keep in mind that you may have and probably will have a different set of judges coming forward. But there's still very valuable information to go back and look at. What did the judges think of your team? All of our scores there's a numeric section, but then there's also a section where the judges are going to put a positive comment and a positively constructive comment about a way your team can improve. To look over those really quick, there's the 3 judging rubrics for project, and core values and robot design. And they are a guiding light for your team as they move forward into the championship event. Now, just because a judge says your team should do this or that, and if you address that, remember, you do have different judges moving forward, and there is some level of subjectivity in the judging, but it's still very helpful to go back and review those those rubrics in the event hub. And last, and we have seen some wonderful examples of this. Bring your team spirit. It has been a very much a joy this season, as it is all seasons. But I was just even today going back to the old pictures from our events this year. It was bringing a tear to my eyes, seeing some of the fun and goofiness we see out there. You've done a wonderful job. I just want to, bring it home. We have one more event here this weekend. So just bring out all those signs, bring out those costumes, bring out those cheers, and support our students, and remind our families to come out and support what we're doing here. This is a great opportunity for these young kids to really have fun and show off all that hard work. So just keep it up. I've been very happy with what I've seen so far, but let's make sure to keep it going this weekend. Again, I'm going to take a moment here and pause. Is there any questions? I see the chat keeps rolling by. Caroline, is there anything I missed?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I was chatting with Scott about the core values report form. And so is it potentially possible that after everything is weighted and scored, which is really objective, like the core values report form could weigh into who's the winner? Because and then nobody would really know what that assessment was, right? I think it actually maybe likely explains how my team even made it to the state championship, because they're really great at those core values, and I don't know how they made it there. So I'm just curious how all that works.
Oh, okay, yeah. So first, well, it's a little late now. We're actually doing pretty well. I always suggest as a coach to volunteer at another event as a judge. And so next season, I strongly recommend, because then you get a behind the curtain scene of how this process works. And you're always invited and encouraged, in fact, to judge at an event your team's not participating. So next year, definitely check it out. But basically, the idea is the robot game itself, which is 25%, is objectively done in front of everyone. And so there's a score sheet you can see ahead of time. Basically, your team members know the score of the robot game as they leave the table. And so that was really easy and objectively done up front. And then all the judging, the three other sections in judging, we take that information. In fact, here, let me jump ahead a little bit. Well, yeah, I'll jump ahead. So there's these awards, right? And the awards here are the same awards as before. So the Champions Award is a balance of all four areas. So what we're looking for is a team that is good in the robot game. They did a good job describing in the robot design the robot. They did a pretty good innovation project, and they have strong core values. And again, you don't have to win or be the best in any one of those four areas. You just need to be really strong, consistent across all four to be considered for a Champions Award. Now, how technically we do it, there's some scaling in there. Not just scaling, it's all weighted evenly, but there's a score we do, and that score is basically a golf score. So the better your team does across each area, you earn, I guess you would say you earn less points because you're ranking higher, because we use a ranking type system. Then separately, there is the core values, innovation project, and robot design. We judge all of our teams off of the rubrics explicitly, and you have access to those rubrics ahead of time. And when you look at those rubrics, you can see their score basically 1 to 4 in each of the categories. And so we can go through and we can discuss as a set of judges, which teams are showing that accomplish exceeds level consistently throughout the entire rubric. And that's important, again, is if you just say innovation project, to win an innovation project award, you really need to be strong all the way through the rubric. It's not just one particular area of the rubric you are good at. We want to see it all the way through. But so we use these rubrics to measure the teams in the core values, innovation project, and robot design areas. Then separately, we do have these 4 awards: the Engineering Excellence, Breakthrough, Rising All-Star, and Motivate. There isn't an explicit rubric. There is statements that you can read online on the First Inspires website that describe these awards. The judges go through and identify teams that best exemplify those statements. And so these are teams that, they didn't quite get the Champions Award or that Core Values or Innovation Project or Robot Design Award, but there's something extra special about them that they need recognition for. And that's what these awards are meant for. These are what we call our judging awards. And so these are ones where the judges say, you know what, that rookie team just really blew us away. Just their enthusiasm, they did a great job communicating, whatnot. And we find that they need to get recognized. And we might say the Rising All-Star is a good fit for them. And then the judges are all doing this through a discussion towards the end of the day. Robot performance, where I talked about, that's objectively done in the front. And then the Coach and Mentor Award is done through the nomination forms. So to go a little bit more into the background of how this works, if I were to look at one of our schedules, you will notice that there's a gap down here. So what happens is our judges look at all the teams, and then they deliberate in this gap right here where they compare notes with everybody. And they look at all of how the teams performed across the entire tournament. And they build a score, a champion score, that will rank them accordingly. And then we do incorporate information coming from the robot game matches in there. And that's what that little gap right there is for the judges to have that full all conversation about which teams receive what award and which ones will ultimately move on. I hope that gives some insight to the process. Yeah. And so now from the qualifiers, what we did is we said we would like to have about 30% of our teams advance. And so we will look at it and say, okay, if we have 40 teams competing, 12 of them should be moving on, 12 or 13. And so we would look at the Champions Awards and we will look at the top 12 or 13 performing teams, which is weird because maybe that's a lot of advancing teams. In fact, there might be more awards than advancing there. So yeah. Hopefully that didn't get too confusing. I invite anybody and everybody to come judge to see the process once. It's very informative, not only about the process itself, you get an idea of seeing other teams and the creative ways they come up to explain things. And it's very, very possible going from the qualifier to your championship award to advance without receiving any award at all, because your team was somewhat balanced. Usually is what happens. Your team is balanced, but they were just behind someone else in all the different categories. And so you still advance, but you just didn't have that award coming out of the qualifier. And that happens quite a bit too. So, yeah. So overall, congratulations. Can't wait to see you this weekend. That's the way to take this. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Good. Other questions? And I think Scott mentioned we don't ever publish the judges' comments, or no, I shouldn't say the judges' comments, the judges' scores, because the core values does play a role in there, and can be used and whatnot. So there's always information coming in from all of our volunteers. Yeah. Well, let me move into the last section here, which is the idea that for a handful of teams, this is not the last event of the year. There is a third level, a tertiary level events still to come. So we do end all of our events recognizing the achievements of our teams. We like to say it's a celebration of a season, and it really is. And I hope you are coming into this last event with that thought that this has been a great year. It's a wonderful year to come together and celebrate all the accomplishments of our teams. But we still have the same, do recognize a handful of teams with awards and ultimately advancements coming out of here for their hard work and that little bit extra they've shown us. I've already gone through this slide talking about the fact that we do have a standard set of awards. They are the same awards we handed out at the qualifiers. We're just going to redo it again at the championship. And do keep in mind, nothing moves forward. So if your team won the robot performance before, wonderful. We're going to start all over at the championship. And so do keep that in mind. And I will say the robot performance scores always go up at the championship level. We just see that extra month or so really does a great job. Now, when we were going from qualifier to championship, we advanced a lot of teams. About 30% of our teams in the state moved on to a championship event. Unfortunately, we can't promote the same amount of teams, the same percentages, should say, to the next level. There's a limited amount of events waiting for us afterwards. So after our qualifiers there in December, we moved forward 30% of our teams to our championship events for this weekend. From our championship events, we're actually only going to be able to move forward 5 teams in the entire state, which is a pretty good number, actually. Nevada is very lucky this year. We did get 5 invitations, what we call bids, to a third level, tertiary level of competition. So our northern teams are going to be invited to the World Festival and an event in Massachusetts. I can never say that state. And the southern teams are going to be invited to events in California, Florida, and Massachusetts. Here's the breakdown. So this year, Nevada did receive an invitation to the first World Championship. Last year, we unfortunately did not receive that. It is a lottery-based system, and Nevada, ironically, I guess, did not win in that gamble. So this year we did. So our northern champion is going to be invited to participate in the first World Championships, what we also call the World Festival. Now, in the years that Nevada received a bid to the first championship, we rotate between the North and the South. So the last time Nevada was represented at the first championship, it was a Southern team. So this year we have a bid, and we rotated up to our Northern champion. Next time we receive a bid, it will be to our Southern champion. And so we rotate back and forth accordingly. So our Northern First Place Champion Award will be invited to participate at the first World Festival in Houston in late April. Our Southern champion, our overall champion, we're going to give them the bid to the Florida Sunshine Invitational, which will happen in late June. So that team gets to go to Daytona Beach to compete. Now, the difference here is the first World Championship brings together all FIRST programs under one roof. And so it's at the Houston Convention Center. It'll include First Lego League Challenge, First Tech Challenge, First Robotics Competition, all in one location. The invitational events, the other events, are just First Lego League competitions. However, as you see, they happen later, and they are still championship level events. So the competition actually is really just as tough, if not tougher, because those teams have extra a month or two to prepare. So going to an invitational is a very prestigious thing. Do keep that in mind. And you still get to travel to some great places like Daytona Beach to compete. So our Southern champion is going to get that invitation to the Florida Sunshine Invitational. Both of our second places for Northern and Southern is going to be invited to compete at the WPI Open Invitational in Worcester. Wow, man, I can't say anything out of that state.
Worcester.
Worcester, there we go. Thank you.
Worcester.
I kept thinking of the sauce. I'm like, oh man. Okay, that place. They get to come, and we had a team compete there last year, enjoyed it very much so. This year, Nevada got 2 bids to participate in there. So both of our second place champions are going to be able to travel out to Mass for that competition. And then our third place Southern champion is going to go and get an invite to the Western Edge Open Invitational out at Long Beach, which we had a team compete at last year and enjoy it very much. So that's what's on deck for our 5 top performing teams in the state. Is we do have a team representing Nevada at the first World Championship, and 4 other teams representing Nevada at international level, high competition invitational events outside. And we will announce that in the closing ceremonies, of course, what teams are getting that. For those teams that are not advancing, I do want to remind you there is life after first. I should say life after first Lego League Challenge. Because I always think of I'm thinking of FTC and FRC already. First Lego League Challenge, of course, is one of a family of programs in the first suite. There is First Tech Challenge, which runs from grades 7 through 12, and there's first robotics competition, which is grades 9 through 12. And these are wonderful programs that I know in some of the places, your challenge team is a feeder program to these other programs. But do let your students know that there is a lot of robotics left for them as they move on into middle and high school. And if you have any questions or interest about it, please let us know. We can help you either start a team or point you to the nearest team to you to help your students move on and progress onto that level. As a quick overview, our first Tech Challenge program, this is a level that goes from middle school to high school. The robots there are metal. They're 18 inches to a side, so a large bread box, if you will. They are driven by video game controllers on a field that's 12 by 12 in size. It is a very fun, exciting program. We have an event, in fact, the next weekend. We have league meets in both the North and South for you to come out and check out, with then a league tournament quickly behind that too. So it's a wonderful program, and it's a straightforward progression from first Lego League Challenge to move into this, both as a team member, but also as a coach. So I know we have a lot of situations where we're coaching our own kids, and we want to continue coaching with them as they move on. These programs are a great way to do that. First Robotics Competition is our flagship program from First. This is the large robots. These are upwards of 120 pounds, roughly the size and weight of a human to some level. They compete on a basketball-sized court. We have a handful of teams throughout the state, both in the North and South now. It's a wonderful progression here. It's a great workforce development program where the students get a lot of hands-on experience building a robot. Not only that, in automation and CADing and other shop skills are really employable and look great on a college application. So this is another option for your students as they graduate at our first Lego League Challenge to move on into this program. Again, any questions, do let us know, and we would love to point you to the nearest team or help you start a new team in your area. And I've been pointing this out all year. We do have at First Nevada a dynamic calendar of events that shows all of the information about our programs. I've had you focus on the red programs, the First Lego League Challenge programs all year. But if you are interested in coming and checking out our other events, we have First Tech Challenge, which we have listed in orange, and our First Robotics Competition listed in blue. These are great programs. All of our events are free and open to the public. You're welcome to come by, check them out. We could always use volunteers as well at those other programs. So definitely would invite you to come out and see these events. Well, we're sneaking up on a full hour. I'll open the floor with questions right now. But as I did allude to, I do have another section of extra credit, if you will, Coaches Corner. You're not expected to stick around, but I have a handful of common questions there. Before I dive into this, I just want to open the floor to any questions you have. And thank you, Laura, for putting that comment in there. One of our great coaches down here in the South, about who has coached both FLL and FTC. Any questions about advancement or any of the what's coming next? Awesome. Leilani, you see that? Comment in the chat there. We have another volunteer next year.
I have a quick question.
Actually, you're in the north, so Aki, are you on here? Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a student that she had a schedule conflict, so she's going to miss judging. Is that okay? She still comes for the table games?
Ideally, it's a complete team throughout the entire event. But at the same time, we want to make sure she, who has been a part of this team all season, gets the full experience.
Okay, thank you.
I'm okay with it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think bring her out and let her enjoy the day. Yeah. And they might just say in judging, especially if there's, we're missing someone because of this. It happens. We always get someone sick, or now that we've changed over to the new year, they're starting out participating in a different sport or club. All right. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned that judges don't know about the teams receive the award from the qualification day. So, but you know that kids are going to tell them at first thing because they're so excited.
And they're welcome to. They are. Just as a coach, as you're preparing them for that judging session, just keep in mind that those judges don't know that you received that award, and the students are more than welcome to share their accomplishment for sure. Just don't make an assumption of the team like, well, we've already won this award, you should know about our innovation project because of that. Just as a little tidbit going into that coaching session, do start from scratch there. But yeah, definitely the kids are welcome to share that.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions? Go ahead, Cassandra. Oh, go ahead.
Hi there. Ask a question about the innovation. So, if the team wanted to explore the innovation piece and making it a reality, can you refresh my memory on how they could do that through FIRST?
Right. So there's a number of ways to do it. One is so it depends on what your project is. So if it's like a service, you're very much encouraged to continue to provide that service to the community, help move that forward. I've definitely heard of and seen teams who have changed legislation within their own state. And so that if that's a direction your team is interested in, they can do that. For teams that are building tangible items, you can definitely start exploring the development of that to the point of even getting a patent for it. And FIRST does provide some information on their website about the patent process, if that's a direction you want to go in. And so your team is highly encouraged to continue developing it. I've even seen some rare examples of teams that carried over from one season to the next. Their project, the important is it has to have obvious ties to both themes. But really from here on out, it's really the drive of the team and setting their own goals for what they want to do with that project. And so if they're trying to do a service or a policy amongst their community, they're really encouraged to do that. And if you ever come to BAL, let us know. We'd love to help promote it. Similar wise, if you're trying to develop a product, there's some information on the FIRST website about that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any others? Go ahead.
Just need to let you know before we start our section today, I shared our problem with Mr. Duncan, and he mentioned that we can send a video or email and he can help us. Is that okay if I can include you also in that problem with the robot encoding that we have right now?
Yeah. And Scott's very informed about this. In fact, I would probably ask him for help. But yeah, please do include me as well. And between the two of us, hopefully we can figure it out. Yeah.
Yes, tomorrow I will be in touch with you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, we are at a full hour, and you are welcome. And I do like to try to keep everything to an hour. And really, all the information I've shared out is the key information I want to make sure you had in your hands going into the championship event this weekend. What I have remaining is a handful of slides that just address common questions we've seen in the robot game specifically. You're more than welcome to stick around and listen or ask questions and be interactive here. If you do need to go be with your families, totally understand. You're not going to really miss out on anything. This is published online. We will have, of course, the video recording and all my notes are online. But if you're interested in sticking around and hearing some of these robot game questions, some of them are related specific to missions. Some are just general ideas. Just want to let you kind of know we're going to go into kind of some bonus time here. It shouldn't be, I hope, not more than 10 or 15 minutes at most of extra time here. And Scott, this is where I'll have you pop on and kind of help me address some of these as well. So one of the first questions, and Scott, I did rearrange these from the way you sent them to me, so we're going to go to rapid fire. So one of the common questions, and again, I have, I think, 6 of them here. Let me just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, 7, 8, 7, 8. We'll go 8. So I got extra bonus on bonus. First question was, can the robot return to the launch area or home and then go back out and to do missions without the technician stopping it? And first off, I'm going to put the robot game rulebook picture up on almost every slide as a reminder. This is your definitive source of information. And one of the first things this rulebook says is all robot game wording means precisely and only what it says. If a detail is not mentioned, it does not matter. And so to address this particular question, can the robot return to launch area or home and then go back out without a technician touching it? Nowhere in the rulebook does it say that's not allowed. And so this is an example of that. The rulebook is trying to be as concise and as small and as accessible as possible without having to cover every possibility. And this is one of those possibilities that teams might get creative with. And because the rulebook does not forbid it, maybe consider it. All right, first one, that's easy peasy. They're going to get more hard as we keep going. Is the south wall considered part of the launch area? And what this means, and this is a tricky one because I have seen this quite a bit. As you've now seen, the robot game table itself physically is a table with railings on it. And the question is, those railings, are they considered part of the launch area? And if you look at the diagrams included in the robot game rulebook, in fact, there's 2 of them that consistently say no. The railings are not a part of the launch area. So you see there on the diagram, the yellow and red in the southwest corner and the blue and yellow in the southeast corner, they stop at the mat. The mat has a very definitive line on it that outlines what the launch area is. In fact, it's that red area on the left side and that blue area on the right side. It does not include the railing that is part of the physical table. Where teams can get in trouble there is if they have a taller robot that sticks over the edge of that railing, that will go outside of the launch area. So keep that in mind. And I know during our robot our Robot in a Day workshop and our next level programming workshop, we talked about consistently lining the robot up in some way and using that southern railing as a way to do it. But be mindful, your robot can't extend over the top of that barrier in any way. So that is a violation of one of the rules. And the referee hopefully will catch it if you do that and remind your team in a polite way that that robot needs to be completely in that quarter circle launch area that is defined by the lines on the mat itself. Related to that is the question, can the item stored at home hang over the wall? And this is one of those where, you know what, the robot game rulebook actually has a explicit answer. So if you do look in rule 2 of the before the match setup section, there is a statement that says equipment stored on the table may extend past the left and right walls only as needed. So, you've got your gap between the mat and the railing walls of the table. And what this rule is allowing your team to do is if it needs to hang over the outside of the left and right walls only, that's important, it's allowed. You cannot do it on the southern or the northern walls. Only the left and right, east and west walls are allowed. So that does give you a little extra space there if you have an attachment or whatever that might be need a little bit more extra room to store it in that home area. So do keep that in mind. The rules here actually do allow it as long as you're only extending over the left or right walls, not on the southern wall, which is more likely where that violation might come up. Oh, we're whipping through these. Ooh, hold that question, because I'm going to answer that one next-ish in the next 2 slides. Does the robot have to leave the launch area to complete a mission? That's a fun rule, because going back to that beginning statement, if the rule book doesn't explicitly forbid it, then your team can be creative. Now, there is some caveats here that you might violate that you have to be careful about. So, addressing the question, does the robot have to leave the launch area to complete a mission? In some ways, the answer is no, as long as your robot was completely in that launch area before the launch and is completely within launcher home upon interacting with it, or interrupting it, as we might say. So as long as that robot starts in that quarter circle, the team hits the go button, the robot scores the mission, it doesn't have to leave that launch area. But when the team grabs and re-interacts with that robot, it better have all of its parts back inside of the home and launch area. So do keep that in mind. So the answer to this question is no, as long as your team is careful of when they're interacting with that robot. And do note, going into the rules about the precision tokens, your team can lose a precision token if it interacts with that robot when it's outside of home. And it does highlight even partially. So do keep that in mind. And Scott, if I do misspeak, do correct me on anything. Yeah. Similarly to that, can the robot complete a mission while in home? Right, there is a distinction between home and the launch area. The home includes the size. I come back to here. Home includes that area to the left of the mat and also the area to the right of the mat. So, can the robot complete a mission while in home? Again, if the rules don't explicitly forbid it, you're good to go, as long as you're not violating some other rule that might be related or kind of in play as a robot's doing that mission. So it's the exact same issue. As long as your team, your technician launched the robot such that it is launched completely within that area, and when they interact with it again, it's completely either in home or in the launch area, which includes home, then you're good. So you can get creative about the orientation, location of your robot when it's scoring that mission, as long as it's launched properly and as long as it's retrieved properly when it's done with that mission. So just be aware of that. But again, if the rulebook doesn't forbid it, congratulations, you just found a loophole that maybe makes the mission a little bit easier to work with. So Laura, just like light bulb came on. Andrea did also. Ron starts on launch area. Is it okay? It drives into home, yellow area to complete mission. Yep. So I kind of addressed 2 of those right off the bat. And I suspect our veterans are asking this question: is there a penalty for leaving equipment on the field? And there have been seasons in the past where this was an issue. This year, the answer is no, with an asterisk, right? In general, there is not a rule that states that a team can't leave equipment out on the field. However, there's a couple of missions that explicitly state you are not allowed to have any of your team's equipment touching the mission model at the end of the match. 2 of the examples, it's not just these 2, the immersive experience and the sound mixer. What you'll see in the description of both these missions, right in the middle, there's an italicized blue statement that clarifies, for example, with the sound mixer mission, to score, team equipment may not be touching the sound mixer or sliders at the end of the match. So you're okay using equipment and you can leave it out in the field as needed, as long as in these particular missions, it's not in any way engaging with the mission model. And in both cases, these ones I have here, there's examples of the team's equipment still in contact with the mission model, and you see in both cases, you do not get scored because of it. So to answer this question, in general, you're okay as long as there isn't an explicit statement somewhere that prevents you from doing it. And there are some examples in this year's missions where that can be the case. Can the pedestal be on something? This is one of those where your team has to very, very carefully read the rules and to figure out what the rules are saying and what they mean. So the idea of the pedestal, the masterpiece mission, is your team should find and build something creative to put on the pedestal. And then you're going to move the pedestal out to a certain part of the mat. Now, there's two ways to score this. And as the description says, if your team's Lego art piece is at least partially in the museum target area, you get 10 points. And there's an example of it. It's partially in, and it's not even on the pedestal. As a bonus, the art piece is completely supported by the pedestal. You get 20 points added. So you get bonus points if you can get your art piece on top of the pedestal. However, the blue statement here tells us to score the bonus at the end of the match. The art piece may only be touching the pedestal, and the pedestal may not be touching any team equipment except for the art piece. So this question here is kind of a yes and no answer. All right, if you're only interested in the 10 points, yes, but you don't get the bonus. Because if your team is providing any sort of support with this equipment, then you are violating the blue statement and you're not eligible for those bonus points. So that's a tricky one. And this is where your team members should really be studying the robot rulebook closely and thinking about their strategy for solving these missions.
Question about this mission. So I don't remember who said this, that there's all this gray area and that you can point that out to the judges and try to convince them. So I'm an attorney, and I thought, great, that's like the first thing we're going to do is argue about everything.
Yes.
Now, I think that's maybe not as welcome as I had thought it was, but we had thought that if our masterpiece kind of like exploded and one piece ended up in the museum, that it would technically count. What do you think?
So if it exploded, so it's like all over the place.
Yeah.
So
it's really just like a few pieces that scatter. So, but it's like that's part of the artwork. We said, well, not we, because it's the team who has to.
Yeah, so I'll chime in.
So
I bear in mind, masterpiece, although not a defined word like in the glossary, it is something that's part of inspection, which is the part at the beginning, right? When the team members come to the field, the masterpiece gets inspected like all of their other equipment. I think I'm developing a reputation of being a curmudgeon here this season because I guess I'm the guy who keeps saying no. But I would argue that as the referee, if it's not what was inspected, if it's broken, I guess, in multiple pieces, it's no longer the masterpiece that was inspected when they came to the table, and then that might not score anymore. Again, we go up to the discretion of the referee, and ultimately, then if the team challenges that, the head referee, and I will reiterate, Rubo already stated very clearly and correctly that the robot game rulebook and the challenge updates are the only two official sources of information that exist. So, not YouTube videos, not Reddit, channel, not any of that stuff. And quite honestly, then the other, I think, bookend to that is it states pretty explicitly the head referee makes all final decisions at the events. And what you should take from that is, one, there's a final say, so to speak, but two, it's event specific, right? You go to qualifier and then now you're going to go to the championship. If you have a different head referee, you might get a different answer. And that's perfectly valid per what the rules say. The head referee does get some leeway there. They can't make up rules, of course, but they get some leeway in how they interpret maybe some of these gray areas or situations that the rule book does not cover. Like you say, exploding masterpiece, that there's no explicit wording there that talks about that. They would have to think of, how am I going to interpret this with this situation that I have in front of me? And of course, teams are free to disagree. I want to address, I guess, the other part of, well, should you argue? Should you not argue? Is that expected? Is it encouraged? Is it frowned upon? I don't think it's any of those things, to be honest with you. I think what I would express, and I'll try to express this as nicely as I can to everyone on the call. I'm not trying to, point fingers at anyone or any specific interactions I've had this year, but I would just say in general, the part that I think concerns me and concerns our coordinators when I talk to them about their experience at the events is First Lego League in particular, even more than First Tech Challenge and First Robotics Competition, although at all levels we'd like to see the team members do the work, the youth team members do the work. First Lego League is explicitly supposed to be driven by the students. And I guess my point would be, if this is not something the students themselves thought of, and the students understand the rules well enough and can go stand one-on-one with the referee and explain their position, then you're probably working too hard to inject adult logic and essentially start to, well, you mentioned you're an attorney, but even before you said that, I would have used the phrase essentially litigate the rules. And we're not trying to litigate the rules. And I guess I would hope that all of the adults on this call can understand that that's not desirable and it's not really productive, not only for just the competition generally, but for the benefit of the students. I mean, yes, you might help to get some more points. Yes, they might win, I guess, if that's important to you, but that's not really a good lesson. And also they probably didn't learn much from that. And that's my concern, I guess, when interactions I've had with some of the coaches this season, but even in past seasons, is that, yeah, if you want to argue with me one-on-one as an adult to adult, we can talk about the rules. And I'll be honest with you, I talk to our head referees quite frequently, and we have debates, if you will, with ourselves of what do we think about this and what would we do in this circumstance at all levels, not just First Lego League. And we try to work through it as best we can. So a lot of thoughts being given to it, and we definitely play devil's advocate with each other and try to figure out, kind of where the soft spots are, I guess, in the rules. But if your strategy, I guess, to get points relies on an interpretation of the rules, I guess I would try to tell the kids, well, maybe that's not where we want to be putting our effort. Our effort should be on building the robot, programming the robot, and coming up with a good approach to doing a mission, not trying to get points through arguing the rules. And I guess this is a quick example. A moment ago, I posted in the chat about the rule in the rule book. It turns out equipment is a defined term. So it says, everything the team brought to the field. Great. Is someone going to sit there and say, oh, well, I brought these clothes to the field. Is that equipment? If I brought this ring to the field, is that equipment? The rule book tries to use plain language on purpose to make it more readable for the kids. So it doesn't become, and Rubo just mentioned, if you will go back in time, I could take you back to my daughter was competing. It actually kind of read like a legal document, like it had sections in the whole thing. It read that way, and section 3, paragraph A. And it was basically impossible to say, hey, kids, read this rule book and understand it. It was just really written at too high of a level. And so they made a conscious effort, I would say, about 4 years ago to really redo the rule book in its entirety and change it to make it plain language. That, of course, left more soft spots, so to speak, to argue about, but it was done intentionally to make it so that the kids themselves were able to read it and hopefully understand it and not have to, have a law degree to be able to, understand what the rules were trying to tell them. But anyway, that would be my plea, I guess, to everyone on the call, not only just for the upcoming championship, but your future seasons, or when you're talking, now that you're becoming veteran coaches and going to the championship, when you're talking to other coaches, rookie coaches, and guiding them, that's not the purpose. Yes, absolutely. If the kids have a valid reason, bring it up to the head referee and make that, make that argument. And if it shows they understand the rules, I definitely have seen things overturned because the kids were able to point out something that the referee at the table didn't understand or didn't get right. in terms of interpreting the rules. But when it got to the head referee, it got fixed because the head referee understood the rules better, was able to understand it. So by all means, don't be shy or quiet about it. But yeah, I just really would hope the adults understand that, trying to find loopholes in a legalistic sense is probably not how we want to approach the rule book and its content.
I actually did think it was much more part of and much more welcome than that was actually. I was like, guess what, kids? Make sure you're coming up with these arguments. So, okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I always coached my team members to come in the phrase, could you explain why we're being scored that way if they didn't agree? That was a nice, gentle way to start it. And then and can we also talk with the head referee if need be and discuss it? That's the hierarchy from our side, is to start with the local ref that's at your table and just ask them for an explanation of their scoring. And if they should say, okay, well, I thought the rule book was meant to say this, then the head referee will come in. And the head referee does have final say for the entire tournament. So they do. And ideally, they're the best trained person to do that as well.
Yeah, I just also add on to that, whatever decision they make, of course, one of the highest priorities, whether you like their decision or not, is consistency. Even if it's the wrong decision, consistency, right? Because that presents the most fair results to everyone at the event. So, it's difficult for them to suddenly change it just for one team in one instance. So I would keep that in mind too, as that's one of the other priorities they're trying to keep in mind as they make choices.
All right. Here is the last question. I like this one a lot. Can the audience member, this is the orange person, be connected to the robot or team equipment using the studs? So that's the Lego phrase there on there. So this one actually is interesting because one is in rulebook rule 4 of during the match outside home section of the robot game rulebook explicitly states, if a mission model is combined with anything, including the robot, the combination must be loose or simple enough that if asked to, a technician could immediately free the mission model in perfect original condition. And that's why it's stated explicitly in the rule book itself. And make sure we understand there's some jargon in there. The technician is the student drivers at the table itself, and then the mission models themselves, like the audience members, are what's being addressed here. On top of this, so this one's in there, but of course, there's been some creative approaches to this. So there has been a challenge update on top of it that kind of doubles down on this as well. It says, if a mission model is combined with anything, including the robot, the combination must be loose or simple enough that if asked to, a technician could immediately free the mission model in perfect original condition. And then for the remainder of the season, this was done, I think this was in December or late November, the word immediate will mean if this condition can be met in one single motion, right? So what they're saying here is that you really can't take advantage of the clutch power of Lego to address those audience members. And in fact, the audience members also have these little hands. And so if those little hands are clutching onto, say, the loop of the experts, that's also included in there. So this has been a creative approach that some teams have been doing to ensure the audience members get to the right locations on the board. Just recognize there are two explicit rules addressing this, that basically the models have to be in a way that they can completely go back to the original form in an immediate sense, where the immediate is now been defined as a single quick motion, if you will. So just keep that in mind as part of your strategy for delivering those audience members out on the mat as well. And with that, I am all done. I had a great time this season doing these Coaches Corner, a great time with everyone at the events, and I'm really looking forward to this weekend and everything your teams have been doing and seeing them all come together. So as always, I will continue to stay on this Coaches Corner, answering questions as necessary. But thank you, everyone, for coming out and staying that extra bit, hearing about a couple of missions. And good luck this weekend. Enjoy, and keep those kids in mind that we're celebrating a wonderful season. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, I'm sorry.
Hey, go ahead.
I just had one clarification just with the audience members and the
Yeah.
experts, because we do a lot of work with those. When you say take them, they're still allowed to, like, say, stand on something, but that's what I just want to make sure that they just don't have to be free, but they can just stand on it that way.
Well, let's take an example. If the pedestal, which has a nice flat surface,
Yes.
they can stand on that pedestal, no problem.
Cool. Okay, that's all I needed. I just wanted to make sure that they could be attached, but they could just easily come right off.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is, as long as their feet, though, because they're studs, right? The feet can actually attach onto like a Lego brick.
Right, and that's what we kind of have. But I just wanted to make sure that because that clarification came after our qualifier, so I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, that would be in violation of that rule then. Yeah.
Okay, so the studs cannot be attached.
Yeah, so if you want to think of it this way, let's imagine if there's just a simple plate that the Lego figure is on. I should be able to pick up that plate, flip it over,
and they just fall right off.
Yeah, like the Dairy Queen test, right? Or the Baskin Robbins, I forget.
No problem. I just wanted to make sure, because that was something that we had utilized before. But if we need to change that up, we kind of do. I'll let the kids know in the morning. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Suzanne, go ahead.
So does that mean the same thing with the art pedestal? They can't use the hands to clip onto the art pedestal? To the studs on the art pedestal?
Yeah. So I use the example of the experts because they have the obvious loops or whatnot. And so, yeah, on the pedestal as well, which I was trying to bring up a picture. Something I actually have a good picture of it real quick. Yeah, so it can't be any way. It has to be able to just, if I were to pick up that other part of it, it's not the mission model, it should fall off pretty quickly.
Okay, because I know we were told that, and then at the qualifier, the kids saw another team do it, so they went and asked. They talked to Jenny, and Jenny talked to the head ref, and he said, yes, we could do it. We just had to use everything at the table. So I just wanted to clarify that. So
I think this is an important point to interject. So what I said before, right? The rules are the rules, and the head referee makes the choice. I can tell you, as Rubo alluded to, that's why I asked him to include this in tonight's presentation. This has obviously been probably the hottest topic of discussion this season. And again, nothing online matters. But if you go online, if you like to go into the forums, including even the first official forum, the first Lego League, there is plenty of discussion about this topic. And you definitely see a variety of opinions. And I will be honest with you, even here in Nevada, I believe we basically have kind of two head referees up in Northern Nevada and two head referees in Southern Nevada, depending on who's available and stuff like that. But I think this season, from what I've seen and from what I've heard, the North and the South are interpreting this differently. And I can tell you that this is an area that, quite honestly, I think for the head referees, we like clarity as much as you do. It's hard for us to enforce the rules if something isn't clear. And the text that Ruba had on the screen before, the section that applies to it, and that wording, it's in my opinion, it is very vague. Unfortunately, if you look to that paragraph, there's at least 6 or 7 words that are basically kind of English words, and is like, you could say, what is the definition of that? What do you mean by that? Combine for sure, right? Combination, combine. What is a combination? Someone used the word when they were asking the question for attach. Does combine mean attach? Does combine mean connect? Does it mean something else? That's not a good word. Loose and simple are not good words. Immediately they at least tried to define, but that's one of the words. And then of course, perfect original condition. Perfect. What is perfect? I mean, we talked before about what if someone asked, if the masterpiece explodes, well, does it have to be perfect? In this case, if you remove it, could it be changed at all, or if part of it comes off, that's no longer perfect? I do not like this section. I don't think any of the referees we have statewide like this section, because it puts us in a position where we're having to be interpreters, and we prefer not to do that to the extent that we can. But yeah, I want to point this out, especially because you said you thought you heard differently. My understanding, and again, please ask your head referee at the championship when you get there. That's when I would check, probably at coaches meeting or something like that, to get clarification of how it will be interpreted at that event. But my understanding is that in Southern Nevada, the head referees there are interpreting it that it is okay to have a stud connection, or to have use the hand to snap onto, like the expert ring or the 4 I guess, bars, if you will, that are around the top of the pedestal. And they're allowing it, and in Northern Nevada, we're not. So we have even a little bit of a divergence in Nevada. But again, it's the head referee's decision, and I can't tell you who the head referee would be at your event. So I strongly encourage you, if it's something you rely on or something your team does, to check and confirm that. I guess either via email before the event or when you get to the event, early in the morning, check with the head referee and kind of get a sense of where they're at. But yeah, that's my best advice. Like I say, because it is head referee dependent, I think, how they're going to interpret that wording.
You're welcome. Yeah. These are the moments in the season we always cringe at, like, oh man, it's challenging. But it's always healthy to have a good discussion, and for the kids too. And this is one of those learning moments that kids really look back on and gain confidence through having good discussions. Good. Any other questions?
Yeah. So I guess I'll answer it in words. So the question was asked: can we place audience on top of the art piece? So I just want to go back to, Rubo, what you had before. So you pointed out that blue text for Mission 4 that talks about if you want to get the bonus. Again, it only applies to the bonus, but if you want to get the bonus, that wording. So again, since you have it up on the screen, let's read through it carefully. To get the bonus, the art piece may only be touching the pedestal, and the pedestal may not be touching any team equipment except the art piece. So the and is pretty important there, right? Because it creates two, I guess, criteria that have to be met. So the art piece may only be touching the pedestal, and the pedestal may be touching, not touching any team equipment. Having said that, if you put that audience member on top, I guess I can imagine a scenario where, let's say you've got your art piece, you've got one of the minifigures. The art piece and the minifigure are not touching each other, right? They're separate, but they're both sitting on top of the pedestal. So we have a situation where the art piece is only touching the pedestal. The pedestal may not be touching any team equipment. Well, the audience member is a mission model. It's not team equipment. Again, as defined, there's a glossary page inside your rule book. So that situation would potentially be okay. All I can say is if the minifigure is leaning on top of your art piece, masterpiece, then you got a problem because you're not meeting the first part of that rule. So is it a possible strategy? Yes. But if you're trying to score the bonus, I would just bear that in mind, that as it says, the art piece can only be touching the pedestal. So if anything else, even accidentally, is touching it at the end of the match, it would not be scored that way.
Yeah. Rules.
Yes. And just so we just talked about something that was up for debate. That part they just said I don't think is up for debate. So that part is pretty clear, I think, in the wording. So.
And it's going to be Joseph in the South, and I'll make sure to talk with Joseph on Friday to make it clear.
Yeah. And again, I'll just as full disclosure. So as I said before, I have discussions with our head referees, and we try to come up with our interpretations. Joseph shared with me that he had been interpreting it at the qualifiers, that it was okay if something was connected by studs, or if, for instance, the hand was connected to the loop or something like that. And we talked about it, and I explained my thinking, and the Northern head referees explained their thinking. We talked about it. I think ultimately Joseph may have been moved a bit, but one of the things we discussed, I mentioned it before in this conversation, was consistency. And I said to him, well, if you've been enforcing it that way at all the qualifiers, I would not change it at this point. Might change next season, depending on what the season looks like and what options are. But that was my advice to him, and I think he's probably going to go with that. But again, I certainly recommend reaching out and discussing it with him just to confirm. But again, consistency is very important, and we don't want to create a situation where we give you a massive change in your interpretation. So the fact that North and South aren't on the same page is maybe not perfect, but it's okay in the sense that all of the Northern teams hopefully will get consistent refereeing at their championship, and all the Southern Nevada teams will get consistent refereeing at their championship. And go ahead, Susan, if you got a question. Sorry.
I know he said that because originally we were using our own pedestal and everything. And he said we couldn't do that. We had to use what was on the table. So if the kids connected them together at the table, not using our own stuff, then it was okay. But we couldn't use our own already put together. Because then that way you couldn't tell whether you glued it together so it didn't fall off. So you could easily take one of the audience members off in one motion.
Maybe, although the real reason would just be there's an explicit rule: you can't bring any mission models to the table.
Yeah.
So, and that's a mission model. But yeah.
Wow.
I kind of almost want Laura to like get some video of her kids has exploded. I want to see like the reaction. It just really got me excited now.
Yeah, it's such a yeah. I love her teams. Yeah, good. Wonderful. We definitely went into overtime on our last session here. I hope it was worth your time to have this conversation. I do appreciate everyone's contributions. One last call for questions. Well, hearing none, then let's call it a night. Get some sleep. Get the teams ready for this weekend, and we will see you all on Saturday.